Hello, good evening and welcome to BizFirst Review 360, your weekly roundup of the top business news and developments impacting the economy. I'm Nadim Majid. This week has been very eventful for the country. We saw the swearing in of a new foreign minister. At the same time, we saw the central bank for the first time making its stance very clear on the issue of the national payment platform. Also, PABC's primary dealer license was suspended for a few months following revelations that came to light at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on bond issuances.
Actually happened in the week that had gone by. It's a very salutary development because the central bank had earlier suspended the primary dealer operations of the primary dealer called Perpetual Treasuries, whose activities are now being investigated by the Presidential Commission into the bond scams. Now, there was a few months back a confidential paper that had been prepared in the central bank was leaked out. In that particular paper, one particular primary dealer whose name had been mentioned was the primary dealer division of the PABC bank. We have to separate it from the normal banking operations. Primary dealer unit of the PABC bank was one of the primary dealers whose name had been mentioned by the research confidential board paper that had been prepared by the central bank. So central bank has now taken action against that particular primary dealer, but there are two other primary dealers whose names had also been mentioned in that particular board paper that was leaked a few months ago. So we hope that the other two primary dealers operations would also be suspended by the central bank in the days to come. We are very happy that Minister Mangala Samarivira and State Minister Iran Vikramaratne had completely thrown out the total pay scheme that had been introduced by that was going to be introduced by ICTA, and they had now got the Sri Lanka customs to adopt the Lanka pay being implemented by Lanka Clear with the blessings of the central bank. Now there are two other state institutions like the Income Inland Revenue Department and the Excise Department, which also will have to now go through the Lanka pay system that is going to be introduced by the Lanka Clear. So with that, Sri Lanka's the confusion that we had about the Sri Lanka's payment and settlement system is now being cleared by Minister Mangala Samarivira and State Minister Iran Vikramaratne. We must be very grateful to them, and also we must be very grateful to Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumarasamy.
Here's a quick recap of the top stories this week.
In a pre-budget bonanza estimated to cost the government 4.5 billion rupees per year, the Finance Ministry announced that it will slash excise taxes on small trucks by 300,000 rupees and motorcycles by between 50,000 to 90,000 rupees as part of efforts to boost entrepreneurship among young people. The relief measures will see a 90% tax on motorcycles below 150cc capacity engines be removed. A new excise duty based on engine capacity is to be imposed.
We want to encourage young entrepreneurs because Sri Lanka has a history of being a trading nation of very efficient, dynamic entrepreneurs for the last 2,000 odd years. In fact, as I mentioned, this too is an important step towards job creation. We want to encourage a new breed of entrepreneurs in this country through this sort of incentives.
Among concessions announced are low-interest loans offered to small and medium enterprises and the reduction of a 10% telecommunication levy effective from September.
That in addition to the 10% we are reducing, they will be adding 10% more data onto the consumer.
Shares fell for a fifth session on Thursday, posting their lowest close in 4 months on the back of low local investor sentiment triggered by disappointing June quarter corporate results, but foreign investors remained net buyers. The Colombo Stock Index fell 0.14% or 9.29 points to 6,408.12, its lowest close since 18th of April.
For an example, you take the foreign investors. There have been a net inflow about 26 billion, right, which is very positive. Right. Second question is local investors. Definitely yes. That's why I tried to, I actually brought in the Inland Revenue Act, right. Certain policies were such as the highlight is where corporates that are going to trade in the market will have to pay the normal tax rate of about 28%. So things like that, which are not yet finalized, is definitely having I wouldn't say a bad, but a negative impact. So that's why we are talking about the 2018 budget, so that there will be some sort of policy consistency that the budget will bring in. We're expecting with the new changes that's made with the political side as well, that would bring back the confidence with the investors. What I would like to explain, first of all, political stability. It's not political. We are not talking about political stability. There is political stability. It's just that the policy stability or policies not being consistent is what is keeping the locals out of the market, right? That's one. Your second question was if there are other reasons. Of course, we had a bad flood. We had drought during the first quarter. Right? That affected big time on company earnings. Right? That is mainly, and it's like this, markets do react on expectations. Right? Because of these floods and drought, the market has been having a correction or a pullback because we expected the results or earnings to be flat, more or less flat. Most of the companies down, it's flat or negative. So you saw the market coming down expecting these results. So that, I would say, is the main reason. You can't always have a market moving upwards in a straight line. It has to have its cycles. So expecting the policy being consistent with the budget is where we look at the market to recover.
Stay tuned to Biz First Review 360. On the other side of this break, a chat on government revenue. Welcome back to the program. The government's fiscal reform effort last year has shown some results, with the government revenue to GDP percentage increasing to 14.2% in 2016, the highest it has been in 10 years. But what does the future hold, and where did this revenue come from? To talk about this and more, we're joined by Jayani Ratnayaka, economist at the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. They say you have to spend money to make money, except if you're from the government. The Economic Intelligence Unit of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has compiled a very interesting report on state revenue. To talk about the key findings of this report, we're joined on the show today by Jayani Ratnayaka, who's an economist with the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Jayani, thank you very much for coming on Biz First Review 360. Let me start by asking you, what were the major findings of this report on state revenue?
Yes. So Nadim, so what really drove us to do this very interesting analysis on government revenue was that we wanted to see that 2016 was a year that was marked with many changes to the tax policy in Sri Lanka. So we were interested in looking at how these changes really contributed to the revenue and whether this will really sort of change the revenue outlook for the years to come in Sri Lanka. So with that intention, we compiled a report which sort of really looked at the key drivers in revenue in 2016 as well as the outlook for 2017.
And what were the key drivers of revenue in 2016?
So 2016, we came across a very interesting finding. So what we see is that in 2016, the government revenue as a percentage of the GDP recorded the highest level within the last 10 years. So in fact, it accounted to 14.2% of GDP. But what really contributed to this change in revenue was the increase in non-tax revenue. So when you really see the revenue split between tax revenue and non-tax revenue, what you see is that the tax revenue to GDP ratio has remained static at 12.4% last year.
When you say non-tax revenue, you're talking about mainly state-owned enterprises?
Well, state-owned enterprises, then the revenue you collect through fees and charges. So there are many revenue drivers within non-tax revenue, but the state-owned enterprises, the profits and dividends that comes through these, as well as fees and charges, were the main drivers.
As an economist, do you view this as a positive thing? Is it good to have your non-tax revenue performing very high while your tax revenue is not really? Is it a positive or a negative?
Well, you have to really look at at it with the context of how these different tax reforms came into effect in 2016. So when you look at last year, what we basically say is although there were some major revenue changes that were proposed, it took some time for these revenue tax reforms to come into effect. And also, on the non-tax revenue side, you see that there were many other external factors that contributed favorably to increasing the revenue. Especially when you look at the performance of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, which was one of the main contributors. It was driven by positive factors such as low oil prices that prevailed, as well as even the drought condition, which sort of drove the demand for furnace and petroleum-driven electricity generation in 2016. So as a result, these external factors also sort of stimulated the revenue performance of this year.
So at the same time, the government has also been focusing on introducing this new inland revenue bill, which they're hoping will broaden the tax base. Now that is facing a setback at the Supreme Court. If this inland revenue bill is eventually passed, how will that impact revenue collection?
That's a very important question, because the government, in its policy statement that was made in November 2015, highlighted that the tax structure of this economy needs to change from the 80 to 20% ratio to a 60 to 40% ratio.
That's direct versus indirect taxes.
So direct taxes 40% and indirect 60%. But when you really look at the data, what you say is that it has actually moved in the opposite direction. So when you look at the 2016 statistics, indirect taxes accounted to 83% of revenue, which is the highest during the last 5 years. So this Inland Revenue Act is seen by many tax experts as a very important reform process for increasing the contribution of direct taxes and bringing that balance to the tax structure. However, this bill is yet to be enacted, and it also depends on how the date of implementation will also have an impact as to what portion of revenue will be generated within this year and later on.
Another key development in 2016 was the removal of these super gains taxes, which would have caused corporate income taxes to be much less than in 2015. Was this a major contributor to a decline in tax revenue?
Yes. So the super gains tax was one of the key drivers of revenue in 2015. So what we see is when you look at the contributions of the corporate income tax, it has in fact dropped. But it's important to really look at a normal year like 2014 and 2016. A comparison of that sort will only tell you whether it has really had an impact on a very negative scale. But although the withdrawal of the super gains indeed has an impact, but what we see is there is still positive growth momentum in corporate income tax, and that is expected to increase with the Inland Revenue Bill being enacted this year.
In the key insights in your research brief, it also says that consumers contributed the most to tax revenue. Would you care to elaborate on that a little?
Yes. So here we say contributors contributed to most. We're actually looking at the increase of revenue in 2016. So there were many tax reforms that really had an impact on this, like the increase in the VAT rate, the increase in the NBT rate, removal of thresholds, and a lot of other liberalization measures that were taken within these tax structures. And also, there was a sort of decline in the revenue that was generated in the excise taxes last year. So as a result, we see that the domestic consumption-driven taxes really picking up in 2016, partly also because of the slowdown in taxes that are generated through international trade-based taxes.
Finally, I want to come to the issue of foreign trade. There's a lot of supporters and detractors when it comes to the signing of free trade agreements, etc., etc. Another key insight in the report compiled by the Economic Intelligence Unit is that taxes on foreign trade made up half of taxation revenue for the government. What does this mean?
Yes. So this has been a trend that has continued for the past several years in Sri Lanka. And we really don't think that this is a very healthy trend, because the government is focusing on liberalization efforts, and high reliance on taxes is then really an issue. And it's not just that. When you look at the import duty, what you see is that there is large concentration of revenue among 11 products. So that really generates 77% of the import duty in this country.
What are these, like 11 products? Like
yeah,
a few examples.
Mostly these products are petroleum products, diesel-related products, then products that are subject to very high taxes, like alcoholic beverages, even tobacco products. Those are the main items, really.
Going forward, what should the government be looking at doing to address these the concerns that have been raised through this report? How should the government be looking at, for example, reducing its reliance on taxation on foreign trade? What is the outlook?
Yes. So when you look at the outlook, we really see that there are 4 important factors to keep an eye on. So the first thing is that the VAT is going to bring a substantial revenue for Sri Lanka this year. And on the Inland Revenue Bill again, so there is expectations, high expectations among many experts that this will sort of give the direction to really bringing that balance to the tax structure to achieve the 60-40 balance between the indirect and direct taxes as well. And also another key element that I want to highlight is that the non-tax revenue might not really bring the amount of revenue that it did last year, because anyway it's starting with a high base, and also it's highly reliant on many external factors, and depending on how these factors come into effect this year, it will really determine what impact it could have on tax revenue.
So it's more a case of chance when it comes to the non-tax revenue rather than careful planning.
Yes, and just a brief comment on that. However, we see that oil prices will continue to be depressed this year, so that will have some sort of positive impact on non-tax revenue. And also when you look at other external factors, you see that even the inventory levels of oil, even the decisions taken by the USA to impose sanctions on Russia, so these things will sort of have a positive contribution to keeping the oil prices depressed, which will sort of help the non-tax revenue, but it's very short-term, not a sustainable way of looking at it.
Thank you very much, Jayani, for speaking to BizFirst Review 360. There you go. Don't rely on chance. At the end of the day, you need to have careful planning. Before we go in for a short commercial break, a quick look at some other stories that made headlines this week.
Following the success of the Biomedical Sciences degree, BMS and Northumbria University launched a Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology degree last Wednesday. Biotechnology is the use of technology to use, modify or upgrade the part or whole of biological systems for industrial and human welfare. Biotechnology uses living things for the development of various products benefiting human beings.
As a modern multicultural democracy, the UK wants to foster this sort of overseas partnership and give students around the world access to our world-class teaching and research. The 14-year partnership between Northumbria University and BMS is a great example of how this can be delivered with great success. Life sciences is a sector where the UK offer particularly stands out. With 78 Nobel Prizes for contributions to biomedical science, the UK has a rich heritage of life science discovery. A heritage that has transformed scientific knowledge and continues to unlock clinical and commercial opportunities, offering industry an opportunity to partner with globally recognised pioneers and innovators. The British government has a 10-year life science strategy, which has the following aims: to make the UK the global hub for the sector, ensure that the UK is the location of choice for investment, and sustain the UK's position as one of the global leaders in life sciences. So the future of partnership and collaboration between the UK and Sri Lanka in education looks very positive. The launch today of the British Biotechnology degree in partnership between BMS and the University of Northumbria is a compelling demonstration of that future that we are building together.
So the British government very much sees biotechnology as a way of increasing the economy, and therefore I think studying biotechnology in Sri Lanka and hopefully encouraging your economy into these high-tech areas is very much the thing to do, very much the thing to do.
The Body Shop hosted Forever Against Animal Testing, or FAAT, their most ambitious campaign aimed to achieving 8 million signatures for a global ban on animal testing in cosmetic products and ingredients through a United Nations international convention. Despite the fact that reliable alternatives are available, millions of animals continue to be killed for beauty, and animal testing legislation is far too complex. More than 500,000 animals are used worldwide in cosmetic testing each year. This campaign hopes to simplify it with one international convention.
Stay tuned to BizFirst Review 360. On the other side of this break, the potential for greater economic cooperation between Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Welcome back to BizFirst Review 360. Earlier this week, a very interesting book was launched by the author Arshad Qasim. It was titled Enduring Friendship, Sri Lanka and Pakistan, and published by the Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad. Here's a look at some views that were expressed which shed some light on the bilateral relations between the two countries and the potential for greater economic cooperation.
The book gives a deep study of the friendly and warm relations between our two countries in all fields. The first chapter provides comprehensive overview of the context of Sri Lanka-Pakistan relations. The second chapter discusses the strong relationship between both countries in the field of defense. It examines the reason behind the close friendship and mutual understanding that exists in the defense establishment in the two countries. The third chapter analyzes Sri Lankan economic ties with Pakistan and future prospects thereof. This section evaluates the performance of existing trade agreements and other forms of bilateral economic partnerships between Sri Lanka and Pakistan. The fourth chapter examines the broader aspects of the cultural and people-to-people ties that exist between the two countries. It also attempts to find ways in which the warm relationship between Sri Lanka and Pakistan can be enhanced through to communities and individuals in the two countries. The final chapter attempts to synthesize all aspects of the bilateral relationship in order to find how strong Sri Lanka's relation with Pakistan are and will be. Pakistan and Sri Lanka have maintained close, cordial and mutually supportive relationship for the past 7 decades. It's a long time. The two countries share commonality of views on a wide range of international and regional issues. They coordinate their positions in multinational fora and have been helpful to each other during most difficult times. The bilateral relationship between Pakistan and Sri Lanka has played an important role in the South Asian region.
In 2014, Goldman Sachs predicted that Pakistan's economy would grow 15 times in the next 35 years, that it would become the 18th largest economy in the world by 2015. Pakistan's geographic location is critical, not just for Pakistan, but for all of us. It has a 650-mile coastline along the Arabian Sea, borders Iran, and shares a maritime border with Oman. In the far north, it offers direct access to China, the next economic superpower. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor network of roads and railways that are currently underway throughout Pakistan will link China's Xinjiang province to the port of Gwadar in southwest Pakistan. This network also promises to make Pakistan the gateway to Central Asia, home of vast reserves of minerals and natural resources, oil, gas, uranium, gold, aluminium. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor offers Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan the opportunity to transport their goods and market them to regional and global markets. This could be a future. This could be the future, a future in which Sri Lanka could very well share. Looking to our future, it is an economic and a political relationship that we must cement, for it is in our national interest. Oceans have traditionally been the highways of trade. Nearly 90% of the world's commodities, goods, raw materials still travel by sea. The future of both countries lies in the new deep water ports, Gowada in Balochistan and Colombo and Hambantota. Gowada is the pivot of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It will be the link between China's One Belt, One Road project and the maritime sea.
Both nations have a strong resolve and commitment to take this relationship to the higher levels. It is based on mutual trust, understanding, and compassion that is rare to find in the contemporary world. That's why books like these represent the foundation on which relationships can be built. If you want to know what the two nations have done for each other, what we can do together, and what we have to offer, we hope that this book will be a useful source. Books are not just records, they are food for thoughts, sources of ideas and engines of interaction. They are also pointers to the future. This is a gift for both nations, a memory of the past. It is also an idea of many things.
And that's a wrap of our show tonight. Don't forget to look us up on Facebook. You'll find us at BizFirst Review 360. I'm Nadim Majid. I'll see you again, same time, same place next week. Until then, good night and good luck.